Hello and welcome to EMP Power Sports and Marine in beautiful St. Mary's, Idaho. Today we're going to be doing a video that's tugs at the heartstrings. This is how you can tell a real SPS from just a standard base or S model Ducati 916, 996. First off, there's a special VIN character. So on the frame, they'll all start with ZDM. Z is Italy, D is Ducati, M is motorcycle. If the fourth character is a 3, it is an SPS. If the fourth character is an H, it is an SPS. If the fourth character is a 1, it is a base model or an S model. So an SPS, a late model SPS like this should read ZDM 3SB, SB Superbike, or ZDM 3H for homologation, which I believe were mostly the ones that were sold in Europe. And then there's another VIN, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the early 916s were ZDM H for homologation. So if you see a 3 or an H in the fourth or fifth character, it's a good sign you have a genuine SPS. So that'll be on the chassis. The SPSs came with a lot of hopped up motor internals. This has Pankel connecting rods, a G-cam, different fuel injection, different ECU. Most of that stuff is hidden, but you can verify the cam with how it starts and then the ECU. If it's a genuine SPS, you're gonna have a square box called a P8 ECU. Early 916s and 888s and 851s all use the same ECU. Later model 996s and 748s and even some of the late 916s used a little rectangle box called a 1.6. So look to see if it has a P8 ECU. The decals, earlier decals are different, but if you have an SPS, it actually should say SPS on the tail section. You should have a number plate on the SPSs. It'll say 916 or 996 SPS with a number. Mine's number 1309. I think 1700 and change for 99, 2000, and early 01. The early 01s are actually 2000s that were carried over. Late model 01, as most know, Ducati dropped the SPS lineage and went to the R. So this is the very last of the SPS lineage, which started in the late 80s, early 90s. SPS stands for Sport Production Special. R stands for Racing, but these are the homologation bikes, and the SPSs are the true homologation bikes. Most of these are 48 state or for track use only. A lot of them were raced by privateer racers and destroyed. Other things that verify you have an SPS. Now I have some additional carbon fiber on here, but an SPS should have carbon fiber airbox, carbon fiber heat shield on a full 50mm Termignoni exhaust. Most of them will have carbon cans like this. There are some that actually have a stock looking can. Those came in a box. I've never actually seen them. But a base model or an S will have a 45 into a 50. A true SPS should be a full 50mm exhaust system. So that's one other thing to check. You should have, I believe the carbon rear hugger is factory. I know that the carbon airbox I just mentioned is factory. You should have a carbon front fender, a carbon oil cooler cover. While we're in here, if you look at the cylinder head, it's smooth. There's no script. If you see Desmo 4 valve, I believe it was, that is a standard motor. If it doesn't have any embossing in the cylinder head with Desmo 4 valve and it's just smooth with no writing, that's usually a good sign you have an SPS. Some of the other carbon fiber on the SPS models, and I'm not sure if the early ones are like this, but all the later ones should have a carbon fiber under tray. Should also have a carbon fiber license plate holder we have back here. And then I have upgraded, the airbox is factory MS production from Ducati. The original SPS velocity stacks will actually be little aluminum ones, just like the standard bikes. I have upgraded mine to period MS production, but these are factory Ducati parts. They're just they were aftermarket. You had to buy them. I think the RS Corsa race bikes had these, as well as their puke tank would be different. There's one bike above the SPS, and that was the RS, also known as the Corsa, and those are factory racers. I don't know how many they built, probably like 60 or some really low number of factory racers. So this is as close as most will ever get to a factory race bike. This is essentially a factory race bike with a few tweaks to it and some headlights and a tail light, and some of them were plated, although like I said, a lot of these are bought by privateer racers, raced especially in Europe and England, and then they were discarded. So there's not very many of these left. They are become somewhat sought after collectibles, and I do think any 916 is a good investment. Any 996 is a good investment, especially when you're talking about limited production bikes with number plates. So if you have one of these bikes, please feel free to reach out. I run the Ducati 916-996 SPS registry on Facebook. Please feel free to join. If you have one of these bikes, I am trying to track down every one of them from the first to the last. So what else is there on these? It's been so long. Also, the Olin suspension, if you got an SPS, they are all monoposto, which they made some base and S models that are monoposto. With the monoposto, you got the solo tail section and aluminum, so it'll be silver subframe, whereas the base model bios were frame matching steel with buddy pegs. So if you have a subframe like this, also a good sign. You should have an Olin's rear shock on all the SPSs. The S's and I think all the monos, the late model monos came with those. You should have an Olin's damper on any S or SPS, and you should have an Olin's fork on a 2000, 2001 SPS, as well as a 2001 S model will have this fork leg. An S is almost identical to the SPS. The only difference is the motor. You'll have a Strata motor in an S with an SPS style chassis, whereas the SPS is the full-on homologation race bike. Ducati built less than 5,000 from the numbers that I've been able to gather SPSs starting in, God, I think it was 94 or 5, it might have been 96 that they started with the first one. And they made them up until 2000, early 2001. They made both the 916 SPS, which is a 996, the very early ones. There were 916 SPs were actually 955 motors, but I think that was only the first year, and then they went to 996 displacement. A 996 SPS is also a 996, so the bikes are pretty much identical. And they only built just under 1,700 and change of the 996 SPS. The rest of them were 916 SPSs. And on this last generation of them, I believe they built 976, if my math is correct, but it was under 1,000 for 2000 and early 01. If you found this video to be helpful, if you're looking at an SPS and you need to have some guidance, please reach out. You can reach out to us through the website, emppowersports.com. Please go there and use promo code ARMA if you want to get some discounts. We are a long-known Ducati shop and we race with ARMA. This bike's never been raced. It's just my personal dream bike from high school that I used to ride when we lived in California. And also, another thing with the SPSs, most of them would actually have a cast Brembo licensed by Marchesini wheel. The early ones will have a 3-spoke. The later ones like this will be a 5. In gray, I do have the original wheels. These are actually Marchesini magnesium. So these are rare wheels. These were like $3,000 new. You can't get them anymore. So this actually has upgraded Marchesini magnesium wheels. I have period correct, which are period correct. I have period correct Cycle Cat rear sets. I have period correct. I have a Speedy Moto clutch cover, just the bling. I used to be a Speedy Moto dealer back when they were still around. I think Moto Wheels owns them now. We also have the Speedy Moto pressure plate and springs. We used to sell a lot of Speedy Moto stuff at the first shop. And then I just have a, I believe it's a Barnett basket in this with updated, more modern aluminum Ducati plates because the old steel ones beat the crap out of it. Nichols Sport Bike has been bought out, and Nichols Manufacturing is no longer making parts, but it has a Nichols crankcase breather, which we put on all the Ducatis in the old days. The Olin suspension, front and rear, has been set to my weight. We have Olin's internals in the front, and Lindemann did the rear shock years ago. I have Fast by Faraci, which are out of production. Clip-ons, an old girlfriend of mine bought me years ago for Christmas for my first 996, which is a base model. I had for about a year and a half before this one. I have period correct World Superbike Mark II radial masters for the front brake and clutch. These are out of production parts, so none of this stuff is stock to an SPS. It'd be like your stock base model. I've upgraded the air intake runners and the carbon fairing stay. So those are MS Production and DP Performance. Those are period correct original pieces that are total unobtainium. So I've done a lot of little tweaks of this bike. If I remember, I upgraded the steering damper. It had a standard old one, so an SPS and an S should just actually have one pinch bolt. Mine has two because I actually have an upgraded aftermarket damper. This bracket's the only piece I don't have because I sold my original damper. That was on my last one. I have an Evolution clutch slave cylinder on this. Ducati Performance quick change carrier. What else have I done to this bike? Speedy Moto water pump housing cover to save the water pump if you ever go down. Nice little billet Cycle Cat side stand. So I've got all the period goodies for this bike, and I have all my original parts except for that one clamp and bins. But this is my 2000 996 Sport Production Special. She's number 1309. I bought this bike when I was 25 years old back in 2008. It was my dream bike my senior year in high school. She's pretty much mint condition. Less little crack in the fairing that actually happened in our dining room. Other than that, the bike's pretty cherry. So this is one I'll probably never sell. I've had it a long time, but you know, they're starting to pop up for sale around there, and there are some clones and some suspect bikes. So I hope this video helps somebody out there. If it does, please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. We are getting ready to close out this shop and move back to Eastern Canada where my wife grew up. So the shop will be on a hiatus. I may or may not reopen up there or do something else with boats. So this will be one of our last videos here in Idaho. We want to thank everybody for tuning in over the past nearly 5 years to this channel and supporting EMP for the past 16 between the two shops. The shop originally opened up in Southern California. It was a Ducati only restoration, NOS and used parts, as well as a hot rod shop and race shop. This is one of the Ducatis that I built when I had that first shop, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I just want to thank everybody for 16 years of supporting the dream.